Hello, and welcome to my presentation of Ireland as Theatre, a reimagining of our semester texts. So what I set out to do when I created this project was I wanted to choose option 4, which is to create some sort of creative medium to elevate or transform some of the texts in our curriculum. So I wanted to take some of the texts that we'd read in this class and transform them into experimental theater design. Things like costume design, set sketches, and overall experimental themes that I think can both modernize and serve to spread the ideas of Irish culture and to transform them into something that is even more easily accessible to the rest of the world. So this will include things like digital paintings, sketches, notes, those kind of things. Preliminary set design, ideas for costuming, and in-depth reasons as to why those specific things are chosen. And one of the reasons that I wanted to choose theater itself as the medium that I wanted to go with is because I feel like theater can really bring us as not only as a culture but as a world together. And I also think that it's a sort of more accessible than some like text-based things, just because, theater at its heart isn't writing, it's storytelling. I mean, it can simply be sitting around a fire and talking over a story. It doesn't necessarily you don't have to know how to read or even necessarily speak the language. An article in the Irish University Review talked about Irish theatre and how it was important to the culture, but also how it was important to the church and other things like that. And I think that Irish theatre could really be taken to new heights. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do here and that I think could really make a difference. So, the first text that I took was The Children of Lear. And the main thing that I wanted to do with that was the costume design. I think that the theme of transformation in The Children of Lear is absolutely integral, and I think that that theme can be translated directly to kind of the visual sphere by specific costume changes, set changes, that kind of thing. And I think that the swans themselves that the children are turned into are a perfect example of something that could really dazzle on stage. And there's definitely a couple different ways that you could do that, and it's very easy to explore that avenue. And I think that you could do puppets, you could do like wing attachments to the actors' arms. I mean, you could specifically hire actors who are perhaps like contortionists, so, they whirl about on stage. And I think that you could also add things like gems and specific reflective surfaces into the wings to really make them stand out under the lighting. And The Children of Lear itself is a story, as we read, that a lot of Irish children read, and I think that it could really be a good story for children around the world to learn. And I think that translating it to a theater aspect and having kind of that beautiful quality visually could also draw in a lot of children. Because, I know some older children are like, well, that's for babies. I don't want to read that. And I think that this could probably help that problem. On to the air demon costume. I absolutely loved designing this. I think there's a lot of places that you could go with it. I did a little bit of research onto what air demons actually were, and I didn't actually find a whole lot, but there was a couple things that mentioned that air demons actually had ram horns, even though they kind of flew around in the sky, they had ram horns on their heads. And I think that that could definitely be something you could incorporate within the costume. Now, I think that it would also be cool to have the veil, kind of just a veil over her face to represent transformation, and also to just like sadness and grief at what she has done. I think that this could also be a really good puppetry idea to have maybe even just like pieces of fabric, not even like a person, but just pieces of shimmery fabric run around in the air and like twirled around to represent that she's not even human anymore. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was The Dead, um, the short story that we all read from Dubliners by James Joyce. And I think that it would be really cool to do some costume and brochure design. So, what I wanted to do with The Dead is modernize it. And I think that this is really important that it was modernized not to a kind of the dinner party of the original, but to a party where they watched football. um, so instead of a dinner party, it's a meeting for the World Cup between Ireland and England. And I feel like that brings that whole historical context really kind of into the obvious sphere of, further delineated lines in wearing certain jerseys depending on your um, division and depending on, what you believe. And I think that football itself also serves as kind of politics in Ireland and England just because of the still ongoing problems and things between them. So I think that that could be a really cool sort of idea, and it's pretty simple costuming, but I think that it's effective. Wanted to design was a brochure for The Dead, so like a playbill. Now, the thing, as you can see on the screen, that I designed was a crowd at a football game with a skeleton in the middle. And that's kind of to represent both sort of the skeletons in the closet of kind of Irish sorrow, also to tie back into the ending of The Dead with the graveyard and all of that stuff. And I think that that would be just kind of both visually interesting and representative of some of the themes of The Dead. So the next one might actually sort of be my favorite, and that is set design for Juno and the Pegcock. So the really important part of this is that this set design is what's called in the round. So in the round in theater, if any of you have not heard of it, is what happens when you have the audience on all sides of the actors. So instead of having it be kind of like a scene that you're watching, like a piece of TV or something, it actually, it's like a coliseum in that every seat is just kind of directly surrounding the stage. Could both bring the audience closer to the characters because it's a very character driven play, but also to just kind of box them in and become sort of this claustrophobic, like you're watching this family's life come to pieces right before your eyes, like right in front of your eyes. I mean, if you're in the front row, it's like 5 feet from you. And I think that that could just really elevate the story and make it a lot closer, I guess, for the audience. I also think that it's really interesting to think about kind of the stratifications of social class in this play and how those kind of raise and lower as time goes on. And I think that having, the stage be right at the bottom, right in the middle, sort of just elevates that idea of like stratified social classes. And I think that there's a lot of creative freedom with set movements when you have in the round because the people with props and sets have to figure out how to bring new set pieces on stage through the audience. And I think that, if you have certain columns, then it would be cool to have and bring in all of the new furniture and gramophones and everything through the audience onto the stage the way that, like they buy everything. The play, when the son is dragged off screaming into the night to be murdered, I think that that could really be an emotional moment because the character is being dragged off through the audience if it's in the round. Like they, instead of being dragged like off stage, he's being dragged, through the door and out of the building. And I think that that could really, really be interesting. Article that I read from the Educational Theater Journal that talks about theater in the round and children and how that sort of becomes more real for children when they're not watching it like it's on TV and they're bringing it a little closer into the realm of theater. So that is what I had, and this is my works cited. I thank everybody for their time. Thank you for a wonderful class. Hello, and welcome to my presentation of Ireland as theater.